Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Tu Karma. My name is Johnny. Please hit like and subscribe if you like what I'm talking about. And if you don't, well, fuck it. Put your 2 cents down there and my apologies if I haven't got to your comments lately. It's just been so chaotic lately that I don't even know where to start at. But I do want to say is Happy New Year 2021. It's here. We finally made it. Into this, the pivot year. I want to call it the pivot year. This is the year we're going to pivot of the narcissist, or the purpose of the narc. What are they here for, and what is their purpose in our lives, or why are they here to just to torture us, just to use us, or what exactly are they here for? Now, this is what I believe, and from what is this great awakening. They called it a great awakening. I'm not whole. That's not my expertise.
Practical approach for developing your shadow. Well, that's a good one. Let's do a little review of Jungian psychology. The first thing is, if you want to know about this, the proper source is Carl Jung's Collected Works, Volume 9. Volume 9, and there's two parts to Volume 9, A and B, published as separate texts. And Volume 9 is called Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. And the other one is called Ion. But in Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, there's a good discussion of the persona and the shadow,
but this awakening, it's for a purpose, it's for a reason. Now we're forced, you're literally forced to look within. It's still playing out. I'm still going through the awakening. There is phases. That's another thing I learned. There is phases to this awakening. What is this awakening that you probably hear about? What is this going on, or what is happening? It all goes back to the same thing, though. I noticed that it all comes back to the same fucking shit. It comes back to narcissism, or narcissistic people, or toxic individuals.
Jung said, well, the shadow, the human shadow, extends all the way down to hell. And he really meant that, because all the terrible things that people are motivated to do are associated with that shadow domain. And like, none of you are saints in any likelihood. You have a terrible capacity for destructiveness, and when you start to consult your resentment and to see how angry you are, it can terrify you to see the depths of that anger. Sometimes that'll manifest itself in very destructive fantasies.
Because so you're gonna be awoken. So the awakening, that's what it is. And then when I typed that in, I found Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, he's actually a psychologist. From what I understand, he's a psychologist. He speaks of the psyche. He follows a lot of Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, I believe there's Nietzsche as well, all those greats when it comes to the psyche, which means psychology. That's something that's intrigued me, and I've been stuck on that ever since, is human behavior.
Which you might not want to become conscious of because they're so brutal, let's say, and so aggressive that you can't even believe that you generate them, the nice person that's you. So it's quite frightening to open the door and see all that, and that also associates you with the entire dark shadow of mankind, right? The satanic element of the human character.
How are people acting and why they act like that? That's something that's always, or lately meaning since my awakening, and that's all I've been feeding myself is just what is a narc? What is narcissism? Now, with that said,
but it opens the door to understanding as well, to understanding how people can do terrible things, because you could see yourself as one of the people who can do terrible things. That's really useful, because then maybe you start to be motivated to be the sort of person who wouldn't do terrible things, if you can really come to terms with the fact that that's part and parcel of you. It also is in perverse sense, it's also a discovery of your own strength, though, because, if you have that desire for aggression, that desire for destruction, and that ability to fantasize in that aggressive manner, it also means that you can incorporate some of that into your speech and into your actions, so that you're a lot more immovable, right? And
I was going down the rabbit hole. I was getting lost. I did not know where I was going. I really didn't know where narcissism really was. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know bulletproof boundaries. I didn't know what self-respect means. I didn't know what high value meant. I was all about revenge. Just wanted revenge. I was so full of anger, bitter. I was just so fucking pissed the fuck off. Literally, I was just pissed the fuck off, hating. I was hating. Not as a hater, just hating as in like, I want to strangle. I want to, strangle. Now, with that said, it's the past. It's burned. But of course, we pick up, we forget about the past, which it is, and that's where it's going to stay, by the way. So
a lot more of a force to contend with. It can give you some respect for yourself when you realize that you're a force of destruction as well as creation. And then you're also more likely to treat yourself with a bit more intelligent caution, you know, to know that that part of you is a ticking bomb in some sense that could go off. And so you tread a bit more lightly around yourself.
Danny, from what I'm seeing, Hayoka is a super empath. That's exactly what it is, except that we have, that I know, is just we're more and more narcissistic, you know, or at least more higher in the narcissistic traits. Big reason at first, because me thinking or understanding that I am the narcissist. I am, and then of course I understand now. And to segue into what I'm going to talk about is that.
And maybe you encourage people to tread a bit more lightly around you as well, which isn't such a bad thing. And all the people that I really admire, that I know, have a clearly dangerous side, and you don't want to have that activated any more than necessary. But it's also what makes them respectable and strong, especially if they have that under control. So, that's a bit of a dialogue about shadow integration.
But my heart is pure. I know where I stand. I know where I'm at. And I don't give a fuck, really. And that's something that I have to input in my head, is I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks, what anybody says, and how they're labeling me. Codependent? Yes. People pleaser? Yes. Toxic? At a point? Yes. Can I still be toxic? Fuck yeah.
It's a very challenging undertaking, to pull in that dark side of your character. And that would be all the things that you've repressed or failed to develop as a consequence of trying to be a harmless and, let's say a harmless citizen who looks virtuous on the surface. That's the Jungian persona. And you need that, because everybody needs a mask that they wear in public, like a suit, so that we can tolerate seeing each other on the street. We don't have to look right into our depths every time we interact. We need that persona.
By the way, what you see and your whole the persona, that's not you. You think it's you, but it's not you. It's a figment of you. It's what society told you to do. It's not you. It's a part of you, but it's not you. But it's kind of weird to explain. Like I said, it's not my forte.
You can tell. I think one of the best. There's two pathways to the development of the shadow, and they're tightly allied with one another. The fundamental pathway is truth, and that's to face the bitter truth about yourself. But to break that down more particularly, you might think about that as the capacity to observe your own resentment. You're going to be resentful and bitter in many situations because you don't get what you want. And if you watch that resentment and bitterness, you'll see that it produces fantasies that can be unbelievably dark. And that can be very frightening, and you might not want to admit to yourself that you're actually capable of having fantasies like that, or impulses like that, or aggressive feelings like that.
I was looking into that, so that's kind of how I got more to know myself, my shadow, through the inner work. What role do I play? What is it that I'm doing? So when you start to notice that, you start to catch the things, you start to catch the flaws. For example, why am I judging this person? Why am I projecting onto others? Why can't I take responsibility? Because you'll start noticing it, little things, and you'll start to catch them. You'll start to realize it. And once you start to realize it, you can start to reprogram it, because everything is a download. At least when you're born, growing up, and what you're observing, it's a download. You're downloading stuff. Just think like a computer. You are picking up things. Don't quote me here. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. But it's 97 or 95% of what you're learning or seeing, you're picking it up subconsciously. You're from your surroundings. You don't know it. It's like you're breathing. You don't know. Like it happens. The other 5 or 3% is the conscious. Like you're breathing. You're consciously doing it. You're purposely. Now maybe that's what the awakening is about. Is you start to become more conscious. But
the thing is that if those aggressive feelings and impulses and fantasies are integrated into your character. It's like you're opening up a dialogue with a part of yourself that can be very forceful and strong and dangerous. And it's really useful to be dangerous, because if you can be dangerous, you often don't have to be. And it's often weak people. For example, it's weak men, generally speaking, who rape. And that's a violent act, but it's born out of weakness, not out of strength. That's for sure. And so,
okay, I found that out, but then I'm like, why am I still so bitter? Why am I still so angry? And I didn't get it. I still didn't understand it fully. So what I started doing was I typed into the computer, I don't know, Google or damn YouTube, and it was, why am I so bitter? Why am I so resentful? And what came up was the shadow, to look within, the shadow work, integration, to be one, to...
anyways, you attend to your resentment honestly, and you observe yourself and what you're actually like. You got to pay attention as if you don't know yourself, as if you might harbor hidden devils, and then maybe they'll emerge. Now,
and why? Because everybody knows their secrets. Go on YouTube, type in narcissism, type in, or that's how I found this out. This is how I started finding this out as well, because I didn't understand why I was so bitter and so resentful.
But that has to be transcended, and the way to transcend that is to integrate the darker parts of the character. They're very useful. That aggression, that sexual demand, for example, all of that's very difficult to socialize, that competitiveness, but unbelievably useful in terms of force of character if you could manage it.
The reason why I say that is because now understanding these mental disorders, or this NPD, BPD, or this whole dark triumph thing, because that's a dark triumph, which is a cluster B. Now, all that, if I were to fall anywhere on that, I would fall more on the borderline personality disorder. If. I just want to make sure that I get that clear. If. Not to mention, all this stuff has to be diagnosed by a doctor, okay? No. And evaluated and all that stuff, okay? And by a professional, not the clinic down the street, literally. Not the clinic down the street, okay? Those are for STD. That's Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is not going to diagnose you with NPD or anything like that. They're going to refer you. So with that said, guys, so like I was saying, is the narcissists, they know their time is up. They know that that's it. They're done.
Jung also felt that sort of embedded inside the shadow were the contrasexual tendencies. And so, for example, sometimes you see people who are well-developed, men, let's say, and we can also talk about women in this regard. Men who've integrated their shadow often also develop a kind of peculiar grace that would be a consequence of not only allowing their aggressive side to step forward, but also their feminine and compassionate side that they may have kept squelched because of embarrassment about it, or because they'd been harassed for being weak, or any number of things. So, but the practical approach for developing your shadow, I would say, is to contemplate and consider your resentment and notice what it says. And because your resentment will also tell you what you have to say.
I'm not big in spirituality, meaning as in I learned some of it. I've learned the basics, but not something to explain, and confidently at least.
So look at what happened at Google this weekend. James Damore wrote that memo, and you can imagine he was pretty angry and perhaps even somewhat resentful at having to attend that diversity seminar. And I'm really just using this as an example. But what he did was decide that meant that he had something that he had to say. And then look at the consequences of that, man. It's absolutely unbelievable. And so, if you're feeling oppressed at work, or you're oppressed in your life, or you're oppressing yourself, then you got to notice that you're feeling oppressed. Then you have to notice that you're feeling resentful and angry and bitter, and maybe even like Cain in the story of Cain and Abel, because Cain is sort of the archetypal bitter man. And then you have to decide what it is that you need to do in order to remove from yourself that bitterness. And that usually means that there's something that you have to say. And then you have to say it because your soul depends on it. And not only does your soul depend on it, I would say the fate of the world depends on it. Because, you might be wrong, and then you should be straightened out. Maybe you're just being whiny and you have to talk to somebody about that. But it may be that you're actually detecting something wrong, some tyranny that's directed towards you and other people, and it's like your moral obligation to speak up about it. And so,
what is the purpose of the narc? It's to awaken you. It's sorry to say, but it's to crush you. It's to hurt you, and it's to make you to see you, what you did, what road do you. Now, it's up to you. You don't have to go that route. I was given a choice. I feel I was, I'm not like literally like, okay, what do you want? But I was given a choice of this stuff that you're learning or that you're taking in, because you start to gain this knowledge about yourself. And that's something that I think is people don't understand or see, is when you start doing this work, because a lot of people don't want to do it, by the way. It's because why? Because you're visiting your damn shadow. You're looking at your shitty part of yourself that you kind of repressed and never looked at, never have.
So many workplaces become toxic, to use a terrible cliche, because the people in them won't speak up for what they actually want, or they speak up too late, and then they're all twisted up about it, and you know, they're torturing other people because they're so unhappy, and so forth and so on. So practical approach for developing your shadow fundamentally is radical honesty. And Jung said that, you know, a genuine moral effort was a good substitute for psychotherapy.
Now, I believe it. Yes. Is it happening? Yes. Is there an awakening? Fuck yeah, there is an awakening. What is an awakening? I just describe it to you. You know what it is, or what it takes part in it. And that is my topic of what I'm saying.
Persona, you could say, is a good way of thinking about it. You know, you watch all those rom-coms where there's always kind of a beta male guy who's being real friendly and always failing miserably with the women because basically he's lying to himself and to them. He's a persona. And a persona is the face that you show to the world when you're trying to pretend and to convince yourself and others that you're, I would say, harmless, but we could say a good person. But a good person isn't harmless. A good person is capable of, well, maybe a good person is capable of anything, but is willing to hold that in abeyance.
But, well, that's the part of the narcissist, is to awaken you to that, is to assure you. So, you know, it took me a long time to be at this part right now to say, hey, be thankful, man. Be thankful that you were discarded. Be thankful that you left them. Be thankful that they're out of your fucking life. Because I'll tell you, being a dirty fucking person, it's like, I remember, like it doesn't say, this is some trippy fucking shit that you're going to be going through. Now, if you like drama and you like to be in the facade, then by all means, man, hey, knock yourself out. Just go do that shit over there. Do it over there. Don't bring it on over here. Do it over there. But unfortunately, I mean, it's around. It is around. It is out there. So that is the purpose of the narcissist. And it awoke in me to learn my purpose. What is it that I want to do? Do I want to join? Or did I do it? Now, I'm not saying I want to start singing hallelujah. It's a beautiful song, by the way. Hallelujah. I have a horrible voice. But the hallelujah, I'm not even singing the banjo, you know, hitting the maracas or whatever. No, what I mean by spreading his word is spreading the word of narcissism, narcissistic people, what their intentions are and how they fucking play, what games they play and how they play. That is my purpose. I know that's one of my purposes.
I read this interesting commentary a little while ago on a statement by Christ in the New Testament, and the statement generally interpreted is that the meek shall inherit the earth, but I was looking up the multiple translations of the word meek, and meek is actually derived from a Greek word, of course, because the Bible, at least some of the original forms of the Bible, were in Greek. And that word didn't exactly mean meek. It meant something like those who have weapons and the ability to use them, but determined to keep them sheathed, will inherit the world. And that means that people who are capable of force, let's say, but decide not to use it, are in the proper moral position.
Many have other things to do, but right now, I've been asking Spirit, you can say, to help me and guide me understand what is it I need to do now in this 2021. I explained some of my videos, some of the tricks, now that I'm seeing it, but that was, now I know. Okay. Now I know that my purpose is to spread the word of narcissism. Before, it was called demons, evil, Satan, Satanás, chupacabras, la llorona, la sucia. But it is known in different times of our era, different words, different terminology. It's known different, you know, it's not
And Nietzsche commented on that a fair bit too. You know, he thought of most morality as cowardice, not because morality itself was cowardice, but because most people who are cowards disguise their cowardice as morality, and they claim that their harmlessness, which is actually a consequence of their fear and inability to be harmful, say, or to be dangerous, is actually a sign of their moral integrity. And that's a really bad idea. So, you know, if you're an axe murderer but you don't have an axe, that doesn't mean that you're moral. So now, with regards to, so that's the persona. And the persona is the mask that you wear, and that's what persona means, is the mask that you wear to convince yourself and the world that you're not a terrible monster, so that when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't have to run away screaming. You know, and you might think, well, that's a bit of an overstatement, but...
Not knowing. And the purpose of the narc or the narcissist is to awaken you. Once you're awoken, now I can see something different now. Now that I'm speaking of this. Nah, I don't think so. Never mind. Gotcha. So,
Jung was very interested in phenomena such as, say, the psychological phenomena that would characterize the actions of someone who might be an Auschwitz camp guard, for example. And, you know, that's a pretty monstrous form of behavior. And the thing about Auschwitz camp guards is that there's no reason to assume, really, that they were much different than normal people. Now, there would have been exceptions, obviously, but, and what that means is that perhaps you too could be an Auschwitz camp guard, and perhaps you would even derive some enjoyment out of it, and you might think not, but you shouldn't think not so quickly. And what that also implies is that if you could see what that meant when you looked in the mirror and looked at yourself, you might run away screaming, because you'd have a revelation of just exactly what the human being is capable of. And that's a very unpleasant revelation, and also one of the things that stops people from being enlightened, because that revelation of the evil of the self is part of the journey to enlightenment, and an early part. Now,
it's just, no, man, I was thinking that. What drew the line for me that I think is what it was is to hurt people. To maliciously, you know what I mean? To hurt people. And no, I wouldn't be able to do that. That's one thing I would not be able to do, I would not be able to hurt people. Like, fuck with me, do something wrong to me, give me a reason to justify it, because that's what they do, is they justify everything they do.
Shadow would be all the parts of the personality that the persona rejects, and that might be the aggressive elements. Certainly that's the case for people who are hyper agreeable, and
they're narcs, but those are my narcissistic traits. So I can openly feel comfortable to say that those are my narcissistic traits. So me having those I guess if you want to put it. So I'm gonna comfortably say that now because I know who I am. I really, really know who I am.
You know, and you also have to look with regards to the shadow ideas. Like, you have to get in touch with the depths of your anger. You know, lots of people are resentful about all sorts of things. They're resentful about, women, and they're resentful about men, and they're resentful about the patriarchy, and they're resentful about the left wing, and they're resentful about the right wing, and they're resentful about politicians, and they're resentful about the cataclysmic force of nature and its ability to make people sick and suffer, and they're resentful about their own inadequacies and about their bad parenting, and God, like, the list is just bloody endless, and that can make you very, very angry. And that's part of that resentment. And cynical and bitter and dark and full of fantasies about destruction and the desire to bring things down and the wish that everyone else suffered and the desire to shake your fist at God. And all of that's really
That's
dark.
what I'm trying to say. If you choose, once you're awoken, to go that route and to join them and to play their fucking reindeer games, then by all means, you're just selling your soul to the devil. You're selling your soul to the underworld, because it is a spiritual battle, guys. All this is happening. It goes back to spirituality. It goes back to the awakening. It goes back to doing the work. It goes back to the shadow work. It goes back to being one. And it goes back to narcissism. But right now, a lot of people don't understand it because it's happening to them right now, or it's unfolding for them. Like, for me, all this is new to me. All this shit, if you looked at me from now to a year ago, I'm a completely different person. Why? Because I'm able to understand this now. I'm able to take into consideration all these mistakes I've made, And that's what I'm sharing with you guys. And I'm sharing with what I went through for you guys can learn what not to do. Don't do what I did. Believe me. You could do it. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. By all means, like I said, go fucking knock yourself out. Because you know what I'm gonna do? I'm a prick and say, hey, like, I'll do good. I want to give back. You mean, so it doesn't make me, and what a narcissist does is they want, not what I want, which is to give back. And that's one thing I want to do. That's why I'm sharing this knowledge and I'm giving it to you. I already knew what she was. And I'll say it again. I was in love with horrors. I think I mentioned it this past couple of days, or I think it was 2021 or something, 2020. Having all that to hurt you? Like, by all means, it hurt me shit. If I didn't know all this stuff, I would have joined your bitch ass. Just to degrade you that much more. It just, you don't degrade me. You don't hurt me for that. It's your battle. That's your shit. That is your thing. So, no, I would never go back to narc. So I hope that answered that question to whoever's asking it or whoever's thinking it. No, I would not. Why would I? There's no reason. And by the way, I'm talking about my 18-year narcissistic girlfriend, not my baby mama. My baby mama is more, maybe I'm wrong, maybe she's a covert narc as well. But I see her more of a people pleaser, toxic individual who just riding a lunch ticket. But what she doesn't see is this part is he's just using her for now. He turns a blind eye to her cheating, to her deceit, to whoever the fuck she's. I believe it's one of her ex-boyfriends, I believe so. Just so you guys know, it's one of her ex-boyfriends. And I say it because
disguise their cowardice as morality, and they claim that their harmlessness, which is actually a consequence of their fear and inability to be harmful, say, or to be dangerous, is actually a sign of their moral integrity. And that's a really bad idea. So, if you're an axe murderer but you don't have an axe, that doesn't mean that you're moral. So now, with regards to, that's the...
With her, I wouldn't be able to trust any of them, no. But when I entered that relationship or that contract with her, I already knew what she was. I already knew she was a fucking whore. I already knew it. What it is, she's just the mother of my child now. That's it. And nothing more. What hurt me was my ex-narc. That bitch. That one. The one that I gave my heart to. You mean that one. Why? Because I just couldn't believe that an individual like her, like if you knew her, would do that. Like it was just like a, what the fuck, really? But yeah, man, it was fucking real. Believe me, it was fucking real. I didn't want to believe it. That's why I was so in denial for such a damn long time. Besides my attachment style, that I've learned what my attachment style is now. Thank you. Try to remember for helping me out there. But yeah, man. So I do want to share that with you guys in regards to the purpose of the narc is to awaken you. Okay, guys, to awaken you. Now it's up to you which route you want to take, their route or your purpose, or what you're brought here for. Because everybody does have a purpose. Everybody does have a reason to be helping, I say, and that is mine, and that's what I'm here sharing with you guys, my experience, to show you guys what to be careful for and what to watch out for. Tread carefully on these people. Really tread carefully.
That's a pretty monstrous form of behavior. And the thing about Auschwitz camp guards is that there's no reason to assume really that they were much different than normal people. Now, there would have been exceptions, obviously, and what that means is that perhaps you too could be an Auschwitz camp guard, and perhaps you would even derive some enjoyment out of it, and you might think not, but you shouldn't think not so quickly. And because you'd have a revelation of just exactly what the human being is capable of. And that's a very unpleasant revelation, and also one of the things that stops people from being enlightened, because that revelation of the evil of the self is part of the journey to enlightenment, and an early part, who are well developed men, let's say, and we can also talk about women in this regard. Men who've integrated their shadow often also develop a kind of peculiar grace that would be a consequence of not only allowing their aggressive side to step forward, but also their feminine and compassionate side that they may have kept squelched because of embarrassment. The practical approach for developing your shadow, I would say, is to contemplate and consider your resentment and notice what it says, and because your resentment will also tell you what you have to say, perhaps even somewhat resentful at having to attend that diversity seminar. And I'm really just using this as an example, but what he did was decide that meant that he had something that he had to say, and then look at the consequence. Or you're oppressed in your life, or you're oppressing yourself. then you got to notice that you're feeling oppressed. Then you have to notice that you're feeling resentful and angry and bitter, and maybe even like Cain in the story of Cain and Abel, because Cain is sort of the archetypal bitter man. And then you have to decide what it is that you need to do in order to remove from yourself that bitterness. And that usually means that there's something that you have to say. And then you have to say it because your soul depends on it. And not only does your soul depend on it, I would say the fate of the world depends on it. Because, you know, you might be wrong and then you should be straightened out. Maybe you're just being whiny and you have to talk to somebody about that. But it may be that you're actually detecting something wrong, some tyranny that's directed towards you and other people, and it's like your moral obligation to speak up about it. Practical approach for developing your shadow fundamentally is radical honesty, and Jung said that, you know, a genuine moral effort was a good substitute for psychotherapy.
So, hope guys, we understand this. Please guys, like and subscribe, and we'll go from there, guys. Love you guys. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, and thank you for your time.